Instead of being in the hectic day-to-day, let's sit down and read our Torah portion. For this week, it will be Lech Lecha. Thank you for joining me. Genesis chapter 15. After these events, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great." And Abram said, "Master Yahweh, what would you give me, seeing I go childless? And the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus." And Abram said, "See, you have given me no seed, and see, one born in my house is my heir." And see, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, "This one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir." And he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward the heavens, and count the stars, if you are able to count them." And he said to him, "So are your seed." And he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. And he said to him, "I am Yahweh, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Master Yahweh, whereby do I know that I possess it?" And he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." And he took all these to him, and cut them in the middle, and placed each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. And it came to be, when the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, that a frightening great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, "Know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete." And it came to be, when the sun went down, and it was dark, that a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. On the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, "I have given this land to your seed, from the river of Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Euphrates, with the Canaanite, and the Kenizzite, and the Cadmonite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite." Genesis chapter 16. And Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no child, and she had a Mitzrite female servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "See, Yahweh has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant, that it might be that I am built up by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrite, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. After Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahweh judge between you and me." And Abram said to Sarai, "See, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes." And Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahweh found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's female servant, where have you come from, and where are you going?" And she said, "I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress." And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, "Return to your mistress, and humble yourself under her hand." And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, See, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Yishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. And he is to be a wild man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and dwell over against all his brothers. And she called the name of Yahweh, who spoke to her, You are the El who sees, for she said, Even here have I seen him after him who sees me. That is why the well was called Be'er Lahai. See, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son whom Hagar bore Yishmael, and Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Yishmael to Abram. Genesis chapter 17. And it came to be when Abram was 99 years old, that Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be perfect. And I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you. And Abram fell on his face, and Elohah spoke with him, saying, As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. And no longer is your name called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, because I shall make you a father of many nations. And I shall make you bear fruit exceedingly, and make nations of you, and sovereigns shall come from you. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be Elohah to you and your seed after you. And I shall give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, and as an everlasting possession, and I shall be their Elohah. And Elohah said to Abraham, As for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you, throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you, and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you, every male child in your generations. He who is born in your house, or bought with silver from any foreigner who is not of your seed, he who is born in your house, and he who is bought with your silver, has to be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, for an everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his life shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. And Elohah said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name, or Sarah. And I shall bless her, and also give you a son by her. And I shall bless her, and she shall become nations. Sovereigns of people are to be from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Is a child born to a man who is 100 years old? Or is Sarah who is 90 years old to bear a child? And Abraham said to Elohah, or Yahweh, Oh, let Yishmael live before you. And Elohah said, No. Sarah, your wife, is truly bearing a son to you, and you shall call his name Yitzchak. And I shall establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Yishmael, I have heard you. See, I shall bless him, and shall make him bear fruit, and greatly increase him. He is to bring forth 12 princes, and I shall make him a great nation. But my covenant I establish with Yitzchak, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this set time next year. And when he had ended speaking with him, Yahweh went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Yishmael his son, and all those born in his house, and all those bought with his silver, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that same day, as Elohah or Yahweh had told him. And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised that same day, and all the men of his house born in the house or bought with silver from a foreigner were circumcised with him. So thank you for joining me for this Bible reading in the Torah portion in Genesis. So have a wonderful day, and shalom, shalom.